Hi, I'm Lee Jamison, and this is a special edition of my Holy Man video blog for the introduction of the Ode to East Texas, which is my book collection of paintings about East Texas and stories about East Texas, and something of an exploration of the humanity that I see reflected in the region, but also in just the universal themes of being an artist and being a human being. For me, I've always felt a really deep connection as a result of being intentionally a creator to those ideas expressed in the first couple of pages of the book of Genesis, where God creates mankind in His image. In our image we created him, male and female we created them. What this image is something of powerful importance to me, because what I'm doing in the creation of paintings is creating in images of me. They may be obliquely of me. They don't look like me. If I'm painting a picture of a swamp, how that's an image of me may be lost on most people, and I certainly understand that. But how a picture of a swamp or the battleship Texas or a steamboat on a bayou or something like that can be an image of me can come around eventually, because what you're seeing is those things that rattle around inside my mind. And ultimately, the thing that is me is not the shell on the outside that has changed quite a bit in 63 years, but the thing on the inside that is most deeply me. So that thing that is most deeply me, what is that thing? What's that image? And the book, Ode to East Texas, is an exploration of that within the enclosure, and enclosure is a major theme in the book, within the enclosure marked off by the piney woods of East Texas. When you're talking images of God, it's important to understand the idea of enclosure as a Middle Eastern idea. Our word for paradise comes from an Indo-Iranian word for enclosure, meaning it's a kind of garden space, but it's also just enclosure in and of itself, a place that might be a walled-off place, like a city. And in those enclosures you have on the inside these places of encounter. Now, I've been recently reading through the Bible, and this year I took it upon myself to read through the whole Bible in a year, recording it and placing the recordings on YouTube. And at present, I've been going through that area in late in Exodus and in early in Leviticus, where the worship infrastructure of the tabernacle is being set up. And within that tabernacle structure, you have a tent of meeting. And the tent of meeting has a forechamber where there is an altar and places for setting out the showbread and things like that, offerings to God. places where God is encountered. And then behind that, there is a more deeply enclosed space that is hidden away, like that hidden heart of ourselves that we have. Sometimes we don't even go into, and it can be a mystery even to us. And that, in the context of the Israelites, was where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. Now, in a mobile structure like the tent, I think of the entirety of the worship structure in its hundreds of feet long and wide as being all of it a symbol of the presence of God. And in that place, you have places of encounter. The enclosure there is very much like what we keep to ourselves, of ourselves. And the image of what I am, I keep inside a place like that in me. And I can enter that place and confront myself, because that's the nature of human beings, that as human beings, we can look in on ourselves, on our internal lives, and seek to understand what we are thinking, seek to come to grips with those parts that are difficult to understand even about ourselves, and encounter ourselves, interrogate ourselves, confront ourselves. That is kind of what's happening inside that book, because as it transitioned from initially being a group of paintings that were about East Texas to being a book, then it became an ever more and more intentional thing. And the prose part of it became a part of that exploration as well. The paradise, the enclosure of the space, examining East Texas as a means of examining myself in my encounter of East Texas, as it's represented in the book, is like ever deeper and deeper instances of this tent of meeting, and the forechamber, and the things that we do to expose ourselves to others, but then also the self-examination to do that understanding that can make it deep enough that it can touch somebody else. Another aspect of Ode to East Texas as a book, and this is something that's really, it's been present in the whole process, because so far it's been more than a 3-year long process, is the nature of sacrifice. I just recently found out that 2 of my murals that I painted back in 2014 for First United Methodist Church in Huntsville are, we have discussed the use of the space they are in, and come to the decision, and it's a mutual decision, that that space could be better used for the purpose for which it is intended. That is, in this case, working with 4th and 5th graders. If the murals were not there, that they are, in fact, for their purposes, a distraction. Whenever we do something, whenever we set ourselves a task, and there are things that we decide, there are goals that we decide we must reach, then the steps that we take toward those goals inherently become steps that we cannot have taken, or that we cannot take in other directions. There is this vast diffusion of opportunities. But in order to achieve a goal, you've got to set yourself down and you sacrifice things. Now, that's another aspect of the biblical text that I'm going through right now. In the reading that I read early this morning, 2 of the sons of Aaron are consumed by fire in their initiation of ritual sacrificial process for the Israelite people out in the wilderness. And it's a terrible trauma. And there's a very poignant point at which Moses dresses down Aaron, his elder brother, for not doing some bit of ritual that he has been supposed to do for the process of completing this initiation of ritual sacrifice. And yet, Aaron has on that day witnessed the death of 2 of his sons. And so he recognizes the terrible contradiction that Moses is facing him with, that he's supposed to attend to some little piece of detail when some enormous piece of sacrifice has been set before him. He's been called to make this enormous and painful sacrifice. And he speaks of it in terms of what has happened to him. And in the text, it says that God approved of his objection. In everything we do, when we are setting aside other things to work toward a goal, that's what our process is. It's a sacrificial process. And sometimes the sacrifices are great. I plan for us to have what I call an extinction event, to recognize that these paintings are going to go away in these rooms. And in that, one of the things that I want to point out is that in as much as in the 6 days of creation that are mentioned in the Bible, you see God buckling down and setting aside time to do these creative processes. That's a form of sacrifice. But in the history of the earth, we can look back and we can see a series of extinction events that take what was at that time and erases some vast portion of it. If you think of that as being God's view of the creation at that time, that's an enormous sacrifice of what was there before that was set aside to create the world we live in today. And that's what sacrifice is like. It's a bargain we make with the future. It's something that we do where we admit that what we have can sometimes keep us from moving forward. That becomes a part of my image of God, one of the things that I bring out a little less overtly in the book than some of my other themes, but it is all tied in with how image of God works in the book. So that's a more detailed idea of what's going on in OD's Texas. Thank you for giving me your time on this. I would appreciate it if you like this content, if you would give it a like and also subscribe so that you can receive notifications whenever one of these videos comes out. Thank you very much. I'm Lee Jamison. This is the Holy Man Video Blog.